For football fans living in Florence, the capital city of Tuscany, Italy, the year 1956 was a historical one. Their local club, Fiorentina, had won the Scudetto for the first time in its 30-year existence, and there was much to celebrate as a result. At that moment, it would have been natural as a Fiorentina fan to hope that the Scudetto win would serve as a turning point for the club, the point where they take a spot among the biggest clubs in the Italian top tier, and perhaps, with time, Europe. However, things didn't quite pan out that way. Although Fiorentina did win the league again 13 years later, it was more of a flash in the pan than a sign of the beginning of long-term success. In fact, 33 years after that second Scudetto win, the very existence of the club was under significant threat. They had been relegated to the second division, they were bankrupt, and had a deadline of less than a day to find a solution or risk playing in the Serie C, the Italian Football League third tier. What exactly happened between 1969 and 2002? And how did things get so bad for one of Italian football's most beloved teams? To answer the question sufficiently, let's begin with a change of ownership in 1980. In 1980, Fiorentina was bought by Flavio Pontello, a businessman who came from a rich house-building family. The first couple of years following his arrival spelled a brief period of highs for Fiorentina. He brought in a few high-profile players, and Giancarlo De Sisti was charged with leading the team as manager.
Da questo momento sono disponibile per chi ritenga opportuno utilizzare De Sisti nell'ambito della propria società.
It was during Pontello's reign that Fiorentina also brought in a young Roberto Baggio to the club, although no one was to know that he would develop into a legend of the game.
Abbiamo fatto un passo in avanti in classifica perché se si pareggiava, magari si perdeva, si andava un po' in crisi. Ecco, sono contento soprattutto per la vittoria.
Over the course of Pontello's reign, Viola fans experienced the best of highs and the worst of lows. A title race between Fiorentina and Juventus in 1982 was one of the highs, although they lost that race and finished in second place. After a few more seasons inconsistently bouncing around league positions, Fiorentina got a serious reality check with a relegation battle in 1990. They barely avoided the drop that year, but the cracks that were starting to appear were papered over with a UEFA Cup trophy win at the expense of Juventus. It provided some respite for that title loss in 1982, but there were significantly bigger problems emerging in the background. Fiorentina was not doing well on the pitch, and Pontello was not doing well off it. He started to experience some financial difficulties that led to a string of player sales, one of which was the sale of Roberto Baggio to Juventus on the day of the UEFA Cup final. It was the first sign of things to come with financial mismanagement at Fiorentina. Pontello was forced to leave the club after riots in Florence, and a new owner soon came in the form of Mario Cecchi Gori, a famous filmmaker.
E che dopo aver fatto tanti film imbroccandola quasi sempre voglio sbagliare proprio la Fiorentina.
Much like Pontello's era, Mario Cecchi Gori started off quite nicely at Fiorentina. He immediately got to work stabilising the club's finances and managed to bring in some good players too, most notably Gabriel Batistuta, who became a club icon.
Più dei giocatori italiani e quindi pretendono di più. Io a quell'epoca non ero preparato a questo e ho sofferto un attimino.
Barely 3 years into his reign as the owner of Fiorentina, Cecchi Gori died, and his son Vittorio took over the club. That change of hands was the beginning of the worst period of Fiorentina's history as a club. Vittorio ill-advisedly fired manager Luigi Radice despite a good start to the season.
Anzi, questo qui è un calcio che poi è piaciuto a tutti, a noi, ai ragazzi, alla gente, chi ci segue, insomma.
Radice's replacement, Aldo Agroppi, turned out to be dreadful, and the club fell down the rankings and into the relegation spots. On the last day of the season, Fiorentina got relegated to Serie B.
Paura, no, soprattutto dispiacere per i tifosi, per la società, per i giocatori e per me stesso, perché è chiaro, quando hai un andamento di questo genere non puoi essere sereno.
Claudio Ranieri was brought in to save the sinking ship, and the club got promoted back to Serie A immediately. A couple of indifferent seasons in the league followed, until the club finally got another whiff of the title under Giovanni Trapattoni in 1999.
E quando vidi questa sua convinzione, ho accettato di buon grado.
They only managed to finish third, but that was enough to earn qualification for the Champions League, where they also made their presence felt the following season. Although Fiorentina did not progress past the second group stage in the Champions League the following year, they had a couple of impressive results before getting knocked out. Most notably wins against English powerhouses Manchester United and Arsenal Football Club. By all indications, the club was on the up once again, but they soon suffered another setback as Trapattoni left the club at the end of the 99-00 season. Their best player, Battistuta, was sold to Roma, but again, another cup win papered over the cracks, this time the Coppa Italia. The next year, things truly fell apart for Fiorentina Football Club. The shocking state of the club's finances was revealed, and the data showed that the club was in debt of up to $50 million and unable to pay player wages. As is customary in situations like that, Fiorentina was relegated to the second tier and went into judicially controlled administration. They were forced to file for bankruptcy and, due to the severity of the financial situation, were even refused a place in Serie B. They were given a deadline to sort their finances or risk being thrown out of the league. Cecchi Gori was unable to raise the required funds, and by July 2002, Fiorentina essentially ceased to exist. They'd been liquidated. It all seemed to be going so well for Viola, until it wasn't. The sequence of events in the background that led to Fiorentina's liquidation has since been revealed, and the details are shocking. When Vittorio inherited his father's film empire, he desired to expand it further and made some questionable decisions in the process. At the time, Italian TV was under the duopoly of broadcasters RAI and Fininvest, and Vittorio sought to break that duopoly by buying two smaller competitors in Telemonte Carlo and Video Music. After the purchase, he invested millions into trying to buy the rights to televise Serie A, a plan which inexplicably failed. That failure led to a drastic drop in the ratings of both companies, and he eventually had to sell them off at a huge loss. While all of this was going on, Vittorio was also going through a bad divorce from his wife, Rita Rusick, a film producer. The case cost over $100 million to settle and completely threw Vittorio into massive debt. It was soon after that, and Viola's sixth Coppa Italia win, that the club's financial struggles came to light. It was a huge come down from the high of that much-needed trophy win. The announcement of Fiorentina's financial woes was followed, as expected, by a thorough investigation of the club owner. He was investigated for involvement in money laundering by the public prosecutor's office in Rome, and the suspicions were followed by a home raid from the police. When the police raided Vittorio's home, they searched for an hour and a half before finding Vittorio. He was sound asleep with his girlfriend at the time, a model named Valeria Marini. They were in the bedroom, which was concealed by a mirrored wall that doubled as the entrance. The police shook the room down and found stashes of cocaine, which was not even what they were there for in the first place. They'd been looking for financial documents to back up their suspicions of Vittorio's money laundering activities, but now they had even more charges to pin on him. already charged with money laundering and possession of narcotics while still in charge of a football club that had just declared bankruptcy, the final blow came when Vittorio Cecchi Gori's new charges of embezzlement and fraudulent bankruptcy in relation to AC Fiorentina were announced. He was placed under house arrest while a decision was made about his situation. It was around this time that Fiorentina was liquidated and a new club was founded in its place. In August 2002, that new club was revealed. Under the new ownership of shoe and leather entrepreneur Diego Della Valle, Fiorentina was now to be known as Associazione Calcio Fiorentina e Fiorentina Viola. They had to begin from scratch, booking a place in the Italian fourth tier, the Serie C2, for the 02-03 season. The club won their group fairly easily and should have gotten promoted to the Serie C1 for the 03-04 season. However, a bizarre sequence of events led to a stroke of much-needed luck for AC Fiorentina. The financial failure of another club in Serie C1 at the time, Catania, combined with the intervention of the Italian Football Federation, saw I Viola promoted to Serie B instead. That year, Della Valle bought the rights to Fiorentina's old name and badge as the club continued to pick up the pieces and rebuild. Led by Emiliano Mondonico in the 03-04 season, the rebuild finally culminated in promotion to Serie A for the 04-05 season. ACF Fiorentina may have managed to return to the Serie A in 2004, but the events of the early 2000s will forever remain a dark period for the club and its supporters. This story of Fiorentina's financial failure shows the extent to which corruption can ruin a football club, no matter how huge or successful it may appear to be. With the introduction of financial fair play rules and regulations across football leagues around the world, the expectation is that this sort of financial mismanagement on the part of club owners should be greatly reduced. For the sake of unsuspecting supporters who just want to watch their team succeed, that would be a welcome development.